Obsidian Entertainment, a studio that I've seen go through so many ups and downs. It's almost a wonder that they've ever been able to finish a AAA title, whether that's through rushed development cycles with the likes of KOTOR 2 or Fallout New Vegas, or maybe their publisher went completely bankrupt in the middle of their development, a la THQ and South Park Stick of Truth. But one thing's for sure, these are titles that definitely go to show the talent in this studio and what they're capable of doing. And that's without ideal circumstances. So today we're going to talk about their most recent title, where they did have ideal circumstances. Today we're going to talk about The Outer Worlds. When looking at The Outer Worlds for the first time, it is hard to look at it and not think of Bethesda's Fallout or Elder Scrolls series, especially when you factor in that Obsidian did develop New Vegas, but to me it feels disingenuous to make that comparison. On a surface level, it is very easy to make that comparison. It looks like a modern Fallout and plays similar enough to a modern Fallout, but once you start digging into the game, you realize you're playing something so much more akin to a first-person classic RPG. One of the biggest things that makes me feel this way is the overall game length and world design. A full Outer Worlds playthrough will take you at most 50 to 60 hours at the longest, whereas Bethesda titles aren't designed to really ever end. But this isn't a bad thing. It just means that it is a much more concise and well put together experience overall. The Outer Worlds doesn't use a huge expansive open world, which to some is a detractor, but I don't believe you need to have big open worlds to make a game feel expansive and never-ending. Instead, what Obsidian have done here is they have used a variety of large open areas that are explorable. These are filled to the brim with content and things to discover while not having to walk for an endless amount of time in one direction. The skill and perk system are what people are used to by now. It is a modified D&D rule set, with the skills being one-handed and two-handed melee, handguns, long guns, heavy weapons, dodge, block, persuade, lie, intimidate, sneak, hack, lockpick, medical, science, engineering, inspiration, and determination. Each skill also gives extra bonuses when you rank them to certain milestones. So when playing through the game, I was attempting to be a Han Solo-like space pirate. So I invested heavily into dialogue, leadership, and pew-pew skills, so I could maintain my status as a suave, gunslinging lad who had the trust of his crew. But the big new mechanic within the Outer Worlds is after enough exposure to different enemy types or situations, you're able to accept a phobia, which let you gain an extra perk at the cost of eating debuffs in specific situations. An example being, if you're surrounded by mechanical enemy types, you lose 7 skill points on all your skills. When I was playing through, I honestly didn't see much reason to not accept the phobias because perks have so much use and variety that it always felt like it outweighed the negative costs of the phobia. Another thing to note in regards to your skills is the party members that you bring along with you can also be a great boon, as they can bolster areas you're weaker in, or they could even strengthen areas that you've already invested heavily in to make you go even further beyond in your power. The weapons and combat systems are going to feel very familiar to anyone who has played a more recent Fallout title. They give you crit bonuses from attacking while sneaking and hitting weak points on enemies, but they don't use a system similar to VATS here. Instead, they use what is called time dilation, which enables you to slow down time in combat, and also lets you inflict a multitude of status effects from hitting different parts on enemies. An example being, if you have time dilation active, if you shoot someone in the head, not only will you deal a huge crit, you are also going to inflict blind. The weapons of the game also have a wide variety, from machine guns, snipers, and pistols, all the way to shovels and shrink rays. You can also upgrade every weapon and armor piece you acquire with different mods and stat increases, fairly similar to what Mass Effect 3 started. Your companions also have skills that you may have them use. Most of the skills don't add up to much more than some crowd control or damage over time debuff, but they come in handy while also making you feel like they actually have a use outside of giving you higher stats and increasing your carrying capacity. I won't go much into the companions you surround yourself with outside of each one is a super great character with a great quest line and worth exploring for yourself. Also, Pavarti is a treasure and should always be treated as such. The art style seems to have a 50s space comic influence, while at the same time being mixed with a little Cowboy Bebop and a little Firefly. The aesthetic is extremely pleasing with an Old West feel. The colors of the game are also extremely vibrant and eye-catching. It isn't quite a cel-shaded look, but it is much more cartoony than realistic, which means that with time it'll age much better. As for the music, there isn't anything overly special. It gets the job done is about the most I can say for it. It has a mix of sci-fi and Western-inspired influences, with some orchestral bits too. The thing that stands out the most overall in the OST, though, is the commercial tunes for the different companies within this galaxy.
It's not the best choice, it's Spacer's choice.
The last thing I wanted to talk about regarding the Outer Worlds is choice, and the way you can affect the narrative. One way is there are a multitude of factions that you can gain or lose standing with based on the choices that you make, whether you are leaning more towards corporate favoritism or not. Maybe you save the life of someone that works for a specific company, you then gain standing with that group. You can honestly really feel the faction standing in the discounted purchases you can make, and some of the unique dialogue you can get if they trust or distrust you. Another way is most of the choices you make in the unique regions do affect the outcome of that zone by the end of the game, and who is willing to help you or who is willing to leave you on your own. It isn't a big thing all in all, but faction rep really does help you feel like you are affecting the characters on a grander scale. When you come to the end of the game, it is going to end with a showcase of how the choices you made throughout the galaxy have affected everything. This is going to feel very similar to fans of most CRPGs, as this method of storytelling has been used in so many of them, but it's a really effective way to end on a fairly satisfying note. Yes, you can't partake in the galaxy that you put in all this groundwork to build, but you are able to experience it in some way at the very least. The Outer Worlds isn't as expansive as other titles of similar ilk, but that's not a bad thing. It's not like a Bethesda game where it's as big as an ocean and deep as a puddle. I'd say it's much more akin to being as big as a lake and having the actual depth of the body of water it is. If you're a fan of Western RPGs or classic style RPGs, this is a title you should definitely pick up and give a try.
Puppy!